Hi, I'm Dawn Damari, and you're listening to and watching another episode of the Teaspoon of Healing podcast. So today I'm very honored to have a guest with me, Toni Shelaske. Toni is an entrepreneur and a pet expert. Hi, Toni.
Hi, Dawn. Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's really excited to talk to you. And I like that you're a pet expert. Pets are so wonderful. So really excited for this episode.
Awesome.
So before we go forward, do you mind sharing a little, just briefly, about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I've been in the pet space about 25 years. My first 8 years, I had my own pet sitting business. And I have been, and after pet sitting, then I opened natural pet food stores. So I own three pet food stores in Pittsburgh for 16 years. I actually just sold them on January 1st to another locally owned pet food store. But I do still have one location in Florida. So I've been in the industry and very involved for so long. I'm also a board member for an association for independent pet stores across the nation called Indie Pet. So I'm a board member involved in rescue locally and just kind of have my hands in a lot of things pet related.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. That sounds great. I love, but we have two cats. I know we talked about this a little bit before the episode started. I know you said you're allergic
Yeah,
to cats, so you don't have cats, but you do have experience with cats. So I'm going to mainly just center this on dogs and cats, not birds and
yeah,
other pets, although those are wonderful
great.
too, just because
Yeah,
I don't know enough about them.
yeah,
So yeah, and
same.
we got our pets, our two cats in March 2020, right before COVID
Oh,
shut down, which was great for the kids. Our kids are they're teens
yeah.
now, but it was great. And we did get them from a rescue organization. So I know you were involved with rescues. So do you mind talking a little bit about that and why it's a good thing to get a pet from a rescue
Absolutely.
association?
There literally are about 1 million dogs and cats euthanized annually for lack of a home. So and I'm not saying there's never a reason to go to a breeder, but we should consider rescues before we go to a breeder. And there's benefits to getting adult cats and adult dogs. If you don't
Hmm.
want to go through the puppy insanity or the kitten craziness, you can get an adolescent or a younger animal and it's very rewarding. They know that you've rescued them. And a lot of people like senior pets too
Hmm.
because they just appreciate a place to hang out and be safe and take a walk and snuggle up with you. So there's so many benefits and it's very rewarding.
So for people who are considering getting a pet, before we talk about pet wellness, people who are considering getting a pet, how can they know that they are ready to have one? Because it is a responsibility and to know that, yeah, they're ready to actually have a pet.
So I think that it's important to know that pet care is very expensive these days.
Yeah.
And pet food is very expensive. Even the lower quality is very expensive. So they take a lot of time. We're seeing a lot of more health conditions in our pets these days than we did even 10 years ago. And cancer is over 50%. Over 66% are obese.
Gosh.
Obesity, of course, leads to diabetes. We see a lot of dogs and cats go into renal failure, kidney issues, atopic dermatitis, just scratching themselves like crazy. There's so many health conditions that we're seeing that you have to go into it knowing that, there could be expensive medical bills ahead potentially. So it's a big commitment. It's like having a kid,
Hmm.
you know, and it's a commitment and you shouldn't adopt or get a dog or cat from a breeder unless you're in it for the long haul, no matter what.
Hmm. Yeah, I really liked what you said at the end and all of it. If you're in it for the long haul, because
Yeah.
yeah, pets are cute, kittens, puppies, adult dogs and cats, they're really cute, but It's a commitment. It is like having a kid. And you mentioned that it's expensive. It is expensive.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
And
So,
yeah, and I wasn't aware, but I know, of course, about the renal issues, especially in cats. My parents
yeah.
have been long been dog owners, but I've always had cats since I moved out, and I know they definitely have the potential renal issues, but I wasn't aware that you said about 50% can get cancer as well.
Yes.
Gosh. And so
Yes.
what can we do? I guess I'll ask about cats first, or you can talk about cats and then dogs because I love
Well,
dogs too. What can we
yeah, and a
do
lot
to
of the
start out?
things I say about dogs goes for cats
Oh,
too.
okay. Then sure.
You know
I
what I
guess
mean?
for
So,
your furry friend
yeah.
in general. So what can we do as pet owners to what's the first thing we can do to ensure that they're prepared for wellness and that they can hopefully stave off some of these conditions as long as possible?
So the more of a natural diet, ancestral diet that we can feed them, the healthier they're going to be.
Oh,
Do not believe commercials. Kibble is a very highly processed food. It is cooked at a very high heat and then steam pressured at the end. It is very high in carbohydrates. Cats should not eat any kibble at all, to be
okay.
honest with you.
Okay.
And the main reason why is they do not have the enzyme amylase.
Hmm.
Amylase breaks down
Right,
carbohydrates.
right.
So how can we expect to feed them kibble and expect them to thrive on that? And kibble does not clean teeth. We are misled not only through marketing but also through the veterinary industry because ultimately the pharmaceutical companies are really in charge there. So, I mean, to give you an example of why kibble doesn't clean teeth, so if you ate pretzels,
They're
they
not
get
going to clean.
stuck in the gum line, right?
Yes, yes.
So, and you have to pick them out with a
Hmm.
cute with your finger or a toothpick or get dental floss. So when cats and dogs eat kibble, the same thing happens. Again, that's a starch. So that starch just starts to turn into sugar, and
Hmm.
that's where your plaque and tartar truly comes from.
Okay, now with kibble, so I'm going to disclose we do both wet food for our cats and a little bit of kibble. So if we ever want to transition away from the kibble, and they love it, and we try to get the healthiest one, and we don't. Again, it's not the main part of their diet, but it's probably about half. So how could you transition your dog or cat off of kibble if they really like it? The cats are about 5 years old now.
Yeah. So dogs are usually pretty easy to get off of kibble and onto a moist diet, a home cooked diet.
Okay,
Um, Cats can be a little tougher.
yeah, that is for sure.
Yes. They literally can get addicted to it.
Hmm.
They imprint on shape and texture. So some tips that you can do are if you're having trouble is their favorite kibble. If you put a little bit of wet food on a dish and then cover it with kibble,
Hmm.
as they eat that kibble, they're starting to get a little bit of the odor and a little bit of the texture of the wet food. And this is for someone that is not feeding
Okay,
any wet food at
yeah,
all.
because ours do definitely
I mean,
love the
and
wet
I would
food.
just,
Yeah.
you're going to have some sleepless nights,
That's for sure. Yeah, that's what it is.
but
It's usually at night. We during because we're not feeding them at night. And it's funny. It's funny
yeah.
that you bring this up because I remember I'm a little older, so I had cats originally in the 90s when I was very young. And the health advice back then was the opposite. I always felt guilty giving them wet food because that's what they loved and they didn't
Yes.
really actually like the kibble. And I remember the vet at the time saying no wet food. This is really
Exactly.
interesting.
The vets are being given this information and shown scientific studies because Hill Science Diet and Purina and Royal
Hmm.
Canin, they have the money to do the scientific studies that can say, look, here I have proof that your cat is going to live longer on kibble, and it's absolutely not the truth.
So for people, so this isn't us, but say for people who have cats, because you said dogs are pretty easy to transition, but people who have cats and say they're only giving them kibble right now and they won't even touch the wet food, which most cats do seem to really like wet food, but if you've never given it to them, but let's say yeah, for people who don't give any wet food at all, yeah, for cats, how can they transition? Like you were
Yeah,
talking about.
so you can do that topping it with kibble. You can dab a little bit on the paw to see if you can get them to lick it. You you can put a little bit next to their kibble bowl or put it on the rim of their kibble bowl.
Okay. Yeah.
It can take a really long time. You just, that's the most important thing is you can't give up. For a dog, especially for a cat, you can go about 24 hours, but is to let them go without food. Okay to fast.
And so wet food all the time for cats is fine then.
Wet food, raw food, freeze-dried food all the time.
Oh, that's
That is
great.
because they're obligate carnivores.
Hmm. Okay. And so for dogs, you mentioned it's pretty easy for dogs if they have only had
Yeah,
kibble. So
yeah,
because, and that's because, I just know from my parents' dogs that they pretty much almost eat what you give them. Almost.
yep,
And some of them will eat almost anything, but
yep.
okay.
If you want to be conservative, if your dog has digestive issues, you can incorporate it slowly. 10% of some wet food in with the kibble, reduce your kibble amount gradually. Especially if your dog has digestive issues or anything, you would want to take it slow, maybe add in a digestive supplement. But yeah, it's pretty easy. Turkeyed a dog from Purina One 25 years ago to raw food,
Oh, wow.
cold turkey. I
That's
don't
great.
recommend it because I don't want someone yelling at me, but she didn't get sick. She didn't have diarrhea, and she became a completely different dog. And we never looked back, and I've been feeding raw food and nothing but raw food for the past 25 years. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know you had mentioned raw food. So for people who don't know, what is the difference between, I guess, raw food and wet food? Because I'm assuming a lot of the wet foods, the meat does seem to be cooked.
Yeah, your cans are cooked in the can. The cups that you get,
Hmm.
a lot of times they're even cooked in those little cups. The gently cooked foods, a lot of times they're sous vide, which is a fancy French word for cooked in plastic. But yes, but if you're doing cans, it's better than kibble.
Okay.
Raw food is literally raw. So, and a lot of people automatically think, so I just go to the grocery store and buy some chicken? And no, there's a little more to it than that.
Okay.
And if you go to your independent local pet food store, you're going to most likely find raw cat food and raw dog food and way much more healthier options opposed to your big box stores. Raw food is like a meat, bone, and organ
Hmm.
blend ground. So you're not seeing shards of bone or anything like that. It's all ground and they make it easy for you. They freeze them in many different forms, little bites. Like every company kind of does something a little different. So, but they for the most part make it easy for you.
Well, that's really interesting. Heard a lot about it. I've definitely heard more about it for dogs. Definitely. I know some dog owners that have
Well,
transitioned and they're very kind of almost evangelist. I don't want to say evangelical, but almost
we've been
they're talking about it a lot because you don't really hear it from the vet. So I do know about it, a lot about it for dogs, just from what I've
Mhm.
heard. So
Correct.
they are able to digest that.
Yeah, and you're right, Dawn. I mean, raw feeders typically do become evangelists because we just see so many changes in dogs and cats. They
Okay.
just become brighter in their eyes. Like when if you've ever seen a human detox, if you've ever detoxed
Mhm.
yourself, you do go through a little bit of a die off. You get a little sick for a while, but a couple weeks into it, a month into it, usually people will say, "Wow, you look really good." Like your vitality comes back. But for dogs and cats, their stools aren't smelly. They
Well, that's
poop
good.
less. They drink less water, fresher breath. Like it's shiny coats. They stop scratching. They don't get ear infections anymore. Like it's just amazing.
Now, you had mentioned one thing before, we'll stay on this topic before we change topics. You mentioned, the veterinarians and, I don't actually know how they feel about raw food. If they do eat about half wet food, but I'm assuming the vets, because they always ask what your cats are eating or what your pets are eating. How do a lot of conventional veterinarians feel about this, about raw food?
Conventional vets are not proponents of raw feeding.
Oh,
And they're going to tell you because there's no scientific proof. We just have millions of years of them eating a wild raw diet, you know. So because the companies that are making raw food are not Purina, are
Hmm.
not Hillside, are not the big, they're not Mars Pet Care. They're the companies that have the money that they can run, they can produce those studies. So these smaller raw food companies, they're in it because they believe in it. So, I mean, there is one company, Instinct, that's kind of trying to pioneer some scientific studies and goes to the AVMA conference and that sort of thing. But honestly, I usually tell people don't even bother asking your vet about it because usually they will try to use scare tactics, feed raw food.
And so for, I guess, again, for both dog and cat owners, okay, so besides what you feed them and for cats, the litter. So what's maybe the second thing that's really important for their wellness and to help them be disease free for dogs or cats?
So their chemical load is very high because we typically are using chemical flea and tick treatments. A lot of those are oral. So
Hmm.
we're literally feeding insecticides and herbicides. Most of us are doing heartworm medication, a heartworm prevention, which is not really a prevention. It's
Hmm.
actually a low dose of the treatment. Um, and then we are,
Yeah.
and I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I'm not like, but our pets are over vaccinated. I do titer tests
Okay.
instead of automatically revaccinating. People listening to natural wellness podcasts that are trying to get information from you about how to feed themselves better. I feel like this message would really resonate.
And most of the people are just trying to do the best by their pets too. They are
Yeah,
trying to do the best. And that's different. We don't let our cats roam just
right.
because. I mean, I'm sure it makes them happy, but I just don't want them to get run over and deal with
Yeah,
all the other animals that they're going to deal with out
yeah,
there. And they're
absolutely.
predators too. They'd kill everything. So,
Yep.
and so now what's another thing people can do? Obviously give a lot of love and care, and
Mhm.
they give a lot of love and care back.
I think it's important to, I mean, we see a lot of anxiety in dogs and cats.
Hmm.
And I think it's important to understand that they pick up on our energy.
Okay.
So, we as human beings have a lot more anxiety these days. So, I think the more we work on ourselves and try to get quiet within ourselves, we're actually helping them too.
Hmm.
Um, so, I mean, they do so much for us that I feel like we need to do a better job at listening to them. They can't talk, but they're communicating.
Hmm.
So, we just need to listen a little better. I had an interesting conversation. Um, a woman named Kate Stillman. She's an Ayurvedic medical practitioner. She's fascinating. And I was on her podcast and she was on mine. And when she was just on mine yesterday. And she said something pretty interesting that didn't even dawn on me. But you know how dogs and cats will give you their butts to scratch?
Yes, yes, that is true.
So that's their root chakra,
Hmm. That's true. Okay.
which is grounding.
Yes.
And, I always thought, we as humans always thought, well, they just want their butt scratched. They are picking up on us needing grounding.
Mm, yes. Well, that's really interesting.
And they
That's
want their butts scratched. But, I mean, I think sometimes they hang out more than others.
Mhm.
I just think that we underestimate them, you know,
Oh, for
in many
sure.
ways, in many
Yeah, and
ways.
they really, like you said, they can pick up on their owner's anxiety, dogs and cats. And my parents' dog, they don't mind me talking about their dog. So they've always had Cocker Spaniels. This one's a mix, and he's pretty rowdy. And they say they keeps them young. They're a little older, and he keeps them young. But when anybody walks by, they let him out. Just in a fence yard. When anybody walks by, he freaks out. He gets,
Yeah.
and I'm assuming it's anxiety. And he hates the golf carts. They have little people ride golf carts around their community, and he hates
Yeah.
golf carts, and he will freak out for like 10 minutes after. So I'm assuming it's anxiety, and they do their best to, make him feel
Well,
better.
and it's also a learned behavior because the your parent's dog, his what he's doing is getting that golf cart to eventually go away.
Yes. And it does eventually leave. It's really,
So it's
it's cute.
working. So it just that behavior becomes more ingrained because it's working.
Okay. Yeah, because
You know,
they do
that makes
leave.
sense?
Yes, yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And he isn't aggressive to them or anything, but just,
No.
to he's
No.
very protective of them.
Sure.
And cats too, they can really pick up also on the owner's anxiety. One of our cats is extremely clingy to humans. So how do they really feel when you go away?
That's an interesting question. We don't really know, right?
Yeah, I always
I,
wonder what they feel.
yeah, I mean, time goes quick for them. I
Okay.
don't I don't think we as human beings should feel guilty about leaving them. You can't feel guilty. Plus, you going away, whether it's on vacation or whatever, that's fulfilling to you. So you're
Yes,
going to be a better mom to your kids and your pets. You
absolutely.
know what does that make sense?
Yes, for sure. For sure. And yeah, so, having a pet sitter, of course, really important. And
I mean, I started pet sitting because I really believe pets do best at home. Most people board their pets, and I get it. Most people have to, but I don't
okay, yeah,
for
no, I
many
don't
reasons.
either.
For many reasons.
But I
Right.
do understand why, and especially for dogs. I think because dogs, they can't, some cats, like out of the two cats, one of the cats, she could just be left and once a day someone could check on her. She'd be fine. The other one's extremely clingy, but I know dogs can't have just someone come check in like that.
Well, you'd be surprised. They
Oh,
can. I
really?
mean,
Oh, okay.
when I was pet sitting, that was my customer's biggest concern. Well, what are they going to do at night? Will they
Hmm.
sleep at night? They're
That's
in
right.
their own environment.
Yes.
So I usually would, because I never did overnights. I sleep in my own house. I'm not going to sleep at somebody else's house. I have my own dogs. You know what I mean? They do really well at home. I would
That's
I would do
great.
3 visits a day, late night. They adapt to the routine like that.
I mean, that's a
Uh,
lot of care for dogs
yes.
and walking them and walking
Yep.
them.
They do well.
Yeah, and so as far as also for dogs, exercise and walking, and, I don't know enough about
So
dogs,
important.
but like
And
how
we
often should they be walked? I
cats
mean,
need exercise
oh
too.
yeah, for sure. We give
I
them
know your cats are mostly indoor, but get one of the wheels to exercise, or get the cat tree so they can
Mhm.
jump up and down, get a cat wand. You want to, it's
Yes.
very important for cats to be active too.
Oh yes.
And the fun thing is, people are getting out and about with their cats a lot more.
I wish I could. I wish
Yeah.
there's no way they will let me. I
Yeah.
love to see that. I love to see that when the people are out and about with their cats.
Yeah. And we underestimate, I think, for both species, how much exercise they really need
Mhm.
for physical health and mental health. To give you an example, I walked my dog 5 miles yesterday. 14-month-old Great Dane. I'm gonna have to start doing it every other day, I think, but I walked her 5 miles, and she came home and hung out for an hour or two, and then she picked up her ball and she wanted to go outside and play ball. I was like, oh my God,
That's
I
oh,
have
she's
work
young.
to do. So they have a ton of energy, and they need the exercise, they need the stimulation. And if you have a young cat, get it used to a harness, get it used to a leash, take it for a walk, take it to your local independent pet food store. We love it. It's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah,
Same with
that's
your dog. Get your dog to Lowe's, get your dog to the independent pet food stores. It's such good interaction, and they need that mental stimulation and
mhm.
socialization for their entire lives, not just for those first couple of years when they're learning. They need it forever, and we're learning forever, just like human beings.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, that's something to still try. So if you have an older an animal, okay, this is just for cats. So if you have a cat that's a little older, although 5 years is kind of I just don't think that's older, but they're
That's
not.
20
Yes,
plus.
I know, which is great. So they're still, I think they're still considered relatively young. So if definitely considering trying the harnesses. So how can you convince a cat to get a harness besides giving them treats and just, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a really the best harness on the market I feel is Travel Cat.
Travel cat. Okay.
Travel Cat. I mean, honestly, I would let the cat just observe it for a while, just leave it sitting out. Maybe try after it's sitting out for a few days, putting one paw in, taking it off, putting one paw in the next day, taking it off, just very slowly. Yeah, and
I'll
I'm
check that
always
out.
here as a resource. I'm happy
Okay.
to help. My podcast, Tony Unleashed, is full of different topics. I have several cat specific ones.
Oh, okay. So it's Tony
Yeah.
Unleashed. So
Tony Unleashed.
TONI Unleashed.
Yep. TONI Unleashed is my podcast. I started it in 2022.
Nice.
And the reason why I started it is I wanted to reach more people than just in Pittsburgh, where
Mhm.
my three stores were. And I do still have one in Florida.
Great, great. So yeah, people should check out Tony Unleashed.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then is that your as far as a website where people can get in contact with you, is that also the name of your website?
Correct. So my website is tonyunleashed.com. I'm developing a couple of new companies, so some things are shifting. So if you go to Tony Unleashed right now, you're going to see dog toys,
Hmm.
Pittsburgh themed dog toys.
Yes.
So because I'm in
Oh,
Pittsburgh and people love Pittsburgh, so I developed dog toys specific to the region.
so yeah,
Yeah.
tonyunleashed.com for the
Yep.
podcast and for information so people can go
Yep.
there. Well, that's
Same
great.
with social media. I put all kinds of tips on social media. Instagram is Tony.unleashed.
Yeah, I've learned a lot through here too. I'm going to go check out that independent pet store. I've been meaning to anyway. Thank you so much, Tony. Great. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was fun and it was really educational. So thank you, Tony,
Awesome. Thanks,
for being
Dawn.
here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.